All right, let's talk about something that sounds pretty simple, but is actually, well, it's sneakily dangerous. I'm talking about key performance indicators, or KPIs. We all use them, right? They're supposed to give us clarity, but as we're about to see, they can sometimes point you in the completely wrong direction and do it with this false sense of confidence. So yeah, let's dive into this. This quote just nails it, doesn't it? It gets right to the heart of the problem. A bad metric is actually way worse than having no metric at all. Why? Because it gives you the confidence to just double down on a strategy that's totally failing. It's not about just missing a goal. It's about actively and confidently charging toward the wrong one. And that is the core issue we're digging into. The whole point isn't to just track more things or build fancier dashboards. It's about tracking what actually matters. Because when you get caught up focusing on distracting data, you completely lose sight of the real story, and the real opportunities. So this leads us to what you could call the KPI paradox. KPIs are designed to give us the sense of control, of objectivity. But when they're poorly designed, they create the exact opposite, this false sense of security, where everything looks fine on the surface, while things are quietly going off the rails underneath. So I really want you to ask yourself this question as we go through this. It's so easy to feel good when you see those charts going up and to the right, isn't it? But this feeling can lead to something called the illusion of progress. I mean, at a quick glance, every single one of these metrics looks great on a report. And that's the trap. A team can be crushing all of these targets and still be missing what customers actually want, creating huge bottlenecks for other teams and suffering from this quiet, creeping burnout. It just goes to show that measurement is only helpful when it actually reflects meaningful outcomes. So how does this even happen? How do we fall for this illusion? Let's break down 5 of the most common traps that leaders and honestly entire teams fall into when it comes to metrics. The first trap is a classic, measuring activity instead of impact. Activity is just so easy to count, right? How many calls did you make? How many emails sent? But it often just rewards being busy over being effective. For example, a salesperson making 100 calls a day looks super productive, but if none of those calls are actually closing deals, what's the point? It's not about how many blog posts you publish, it's about whether those posts are actually meeting your audience's needs. Now, the second trap is a really big one, creating KPIs in a vacuum. When every department has its own siloed goals, you can end up with teams that are literally working against each other, even when everybody is technically hitting their targets. Okay, look at this. This is where the problem becomes so clear. In this scenario, the sales team's KPI is just the sheer volume of deals, so they're signing up anyone they can. Then you've got customer success, who's measured on high retention, but now they're struggling with all these unhappy, low-fit clients. And then there's operations, trying to cut costs, but they keep getting blamed for support issues that are actually caused by the bad fit customers sales brought in. Everybody hits their numbers, leadership sees a dashboard full of green lights, but the business as a whole is suffering. It's a mess. And this brings us right to trap number 3, gaming the numbers. When people are rewarded for hitting a specific, rigid number, they're going to find the easiest way to hit that number. And they're not being malicious about it. They're just doing exactly what they're being rewarded for. This creates a culture where people are just checking boxes. They're not truly committed to the mission. The problem isn't the team, it's what leadership has decided to value. And finally, we've got 2 traps that are really just 2 sides of the same coin. Trap 4 is focusing only on lagging indicators. The final results like revenue and churn. The problem is, by the time you see those numbers drop, the damage is already done. It's like driving by only looking in the rearview mirror. And that leads to trap 5. Totally ignoring the leading indicators. These are the drivers of your future results. Smart leaders don't just measure the final sale, they measure the health of the pipeline that leads to those sales. Okay, so we've seen all the traps, and the natural question is, well, how do we avoid them? So let's shift gears and move into the solution. Let's look at how to design better, smarter KPIs that actually help us lead. Turns out there are 5 pretty clear principles for good KPI design. First, always, and I mean always, work backward from your company's main strategy. Second, focus on outcomes, not just outputs. We'll talk more about that one in a sec. Third, you've got to align your metrics across teams to avoid all that internal conflict we just saw. Fourth, remember that KPIs are not set in stone. You have to review and adjust them regularly. And finally, number 5, you have to remember that not everything that truly matters can be measured with a number. You need that qualitative feedback, the stories, the why behind the numbers. So that second principle is really the most crucial point here. It's making that big shift from tracking simple tasks to tracking real, actual value. Let's look at a really concrete example of what that means in practice. This is just a perfect example of that shift. The old way, the easy way, is to measure the output. Hey, we created 10 reports this month. Great job. The better way, the smarter way, is to measure the outcome. Okay, but did any of those 10 reports actually help someone make a better decision? One is an activity, the other is an impact. That's the whole game, right there. So this all brings us to one final clarifying thought. The goal here is not to track more stuff. It's to track what matters. It's all about using insights to lead better, not just to fill up another dashboard with charts. So the next time you're looking at a KPI report, or maybe you're designing a new metric for your team, I want you to ask yourself this one simple question. Is this metric truly helping us move toward our ultimate mission, or is it just a vanity metric that's making us feel busy? Because honestly, the answer to that one question can be the difference between a business that just looks healthy on paper and one that actually thrives in reality.